here causing all kinds of trouble, and you can't understand why people are mad.
And they're mad at you?
Yeah, she sort of busted in Miles' office. I'm good, how are you? I wasn't trying to bust in, I was trying to say.
Crashed it. You crashed it.
Dang it, there were people fighting in the
God forbid a parent tries to see the
I'm surprised you didn't
superintendent.
go and like sit in his chair and do a selfie.
I was trying to do that.
Just so you all know, we are live. The mics are on.
Okay.
We have a quorum. It is now 10 after 6. The Home Rule School District Charter Commission meeting is now in session. We've been appointed by the Dallas Independent School District Board of Trustees. Today is Monday, December 15th, 2014. And we began our meeting at 6:10. I apologize for the slight delay. We are meeting in the boardroom at the Dallas Independent School District Central Administration Building at 3700 Ross Avenue, Dallas, Texas. The agenda's been formally posted. Our first order of business is the call to order, which I've done, and we will now have our quorum call. I will start with Commissioner Freeman. If you'll state your name for the record and say present.
Isaac Freeman, present.
Kevin Malonzo, present. Edwin Flores, present.
Jeff Veazey, present.
Jerome Garza, present.
Bob Weiss, present.
Ron Oliver, present.
Shirley Eisen Newsom, present.
DeMarcus Ranger, present.
Sorry, Dana Gutierrez present. Julie Sandell present.
Benita Reese present.
A quorum has been properly established. We can proceed with our agenda. The second item is our Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will stand and join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The minutes were emailed to you, but they're also in front of you. And if you will take a look at them, if you haven't had a chance, and the minutes from Saturday, December 6th are also attached. If you'll just take a moment to look at those, and when ready, if someone will move to accept them.
Approve.
Second.
Okay, they've been moved to approve by Commissioner Flores, second by Commissioner Eisen Newsom. Is there any discussion? Hearing then, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, hearing none in opposition, motion carries unanimously. In front of you, and I want to thank staff, you have the full transcript, court reporter from our meeting on December 6th. And if you were there, you know it was a very fulsome conversation. It's about 3.5 hours. And because it's such a large file, I asked just to have it printed for you so that you could read it and get a sense of how the meeting went. And again, I want to publicly thank everyone who helped organize that and who participated, and the Dallas County Schools who shared their wonderful facility, and the school administrative groups who helped provide lunches along with our commission. My personal view is that it was time well spent. So if you weren't there or you're not sure about what you heard, take a few minutes to read what was put before you. So tonight's meeting, as we discussed at our last full meeting, there's no presenters. It's us. You know, we met the commission and they're us. So in my own mind's eye, looking at how many people could be here and time allocation, I thought that if we thought in 10 to 15 minute increments for whatever first round you want to make, it's informal. You know, we're not challenging each other. Just the questions I've been asking myself of what have I heard? What do I think's been going on? What lessons have been here? What do I think about charter or no charter? There's no votes tonight. I'm really asking not to put that motion out there. We'll have time in January to contemplate over the holiday how we move forward. And then if you have suggestions, what we ought to be doing next, that would be helpful. Just lay them on the table. You know, we'll see if there's a consensus. If the chair has no, plan in mind, and I have some thoughts getting ready for what I might want to say tonight. And I just want to hand out in preparation, I don't want to cut the time off, I asked Mr. Harris, and I want to thank him, to give us a midterm cost accounting, how much have we spent, and then how many meetings have we had, how many hours have we been here, and try to get it all on one sheet. And so it's condensed. So I'm going to pass it out because I want to say thank you to each of you for the time you've invested in this. I don't know if you think it's been worthwhile, or I've been a good or bad chair, or you didn't get to where you thought it was, but nonetheless, each of us has invested quite a bit of time, and you'll see, and we've done it on a very, in my opinion, cost-effective basis. And if you want to mention this in your comments, you can. This is just information. It's not to set the tone of the conversation. Just because I like to kind of quantify things occasionally. And it doesn't talk about the level of our conversation or anything like that. So that's all I have to say by way of introduction. And I will open it up to whomever would like to go first. I do think it's important we listen to each other. You know, for my style as chair, listening is good.
Excuse me.
I will, we need to be our own monitors about our use of time. If you don't have a lot to say, that's fine. If you want to use all your, 10, 15 minutes, that's good too. I think if we have enough time, I think we could, want to have a give and take. So it's unstructured, it's informal. There's no predicted outcome that the chair's looking for other than to say by 9, I might just say who's got any energy left. So having said that, who would like to go first? Commissioner Santel.
I guess I kind of want to do an overall view of how I feel things are going.
Sure.
I think that this committee has melded in ways that I did not expect, and that we have a sense of shared purpose that has really made me feel this is worthwhile. In my opinion, a lot of the information that we have uncovered, that we have found, that we've heard, is being put into the sunshine. And some of that information is causing change. Some of that information is causing discussion. Some of that information is causing people to come forward with ideas, complaints, criticisms, good stuff. And I personally think that some of the recent meetings by the trustees, the big parent meeting at Dealey, a lot of that's because there's a lot of public ideas that finally someone is listening. Even if what they have to say is a little off the cuff, finally someone is listening. And before we came in here, Mr. Oliver was saying that he really liked the parent that said, I just want a better life for my child. And I just think that there's a lot of people feeling like if they make comments, if they have something to say, someone is going to listen. And as a teacher, I can tell you that half of the discipline problems I get rid of is because I listen to what they have to say. I may not be able to do what it is they want, but I value their opinion. We talk privately about whatever we need to talk about. I don't cut them off like there's something wrong with them. I always listen to them, silly though they may be, and it helps me have a feel for it. And just my own self, from the 2 schools that I know about, which are my husband's and mine, I am getting an overwhelming sense of positive change on the behalf of teachers and administrators. People seem more relaxed. I've noticed that there's been some comments on the DISD website that surprised me, that we don't have required lesson plans, that we do a lot of things that we're suddenly being told in public that is not what we've been told in private. And there seems to be, slowly but surely, a melding of private information, public opinion, ideas, and the back and forth that should probably go on in any kind of public institution. And I am very proud I've been on this committee. I hope I haven't talked too much, but this is really, really important to me. And I hope that we move forward with a sense of purpose, whatever we decide to do, because I think we're having a huge positive effect on Dallas, on the public, on parents. The students are listening to this. I love the students that said, I don't like the multiple response strategy, it's making my class worse. Just, we're getting people to talk about things. And I guess what I would like to see eventually is, I would like to see something like a district chart that showed who did what, who's in charge of what. When we had one of the meetings Mr. Garza and I, and we were asking about testing, the person didn't know the answers. And they're the one in charge. And I just feel like there's all kinds of programs floating out there. Some are good, some are bad, some are great. No one knows who's in charge of them. No one even knows they exist. There's so much conflict. I mean, if you get like a giant organizational chart that took up this whole wall of every single administrator and what they're in charge of, I think we'd find some awesome things that we could spread around the district, and some stuff we're going like, they still are keeping that computer program that no one uses up. And it would just be nice to kind of have a clarification of what everyone does and what they say. So I think things are going well, and I'd like to see us continue forward.
Okay, thank you very much. This is just random, someone raised their hand before I have to call on you.
Well, I'll piggyback on that. I want to come back and talk later, but what I like is we have given parents, employees, people who are interested in DISD an opportunity to vent, if you want to call it venting, if you want to call it an opportunity to discuss openly things that they're concerned about, and hopefully do it in a climate where they feel safe, and be able to be a participant in something that's important, which is our children's education. And that part I'm extremely proud of. And I hope we do continue the process of allowing the district. It's almost like we're kind of pulling the district along. They seem to be changing, or the district seems to be more open to suggestions, less fearful of being exposed. And it's really not they're being exposed. It's like this. It's always been a little bit. Kind of this and that. People in the city have never been a part of this district, or didn't feel that they were a part of it. And now I think the opportunity is there, and they really feel like they have some kind of say in their children's education. The other day when we met Saturday, the fact that we had those 5 entities there, I felt proud for that. I felt that there was a common bond, that people, administrators, teachers, everyone, staff members, had a common purpose, and everyone was buying into making this district better. And I think that's partly because of what we do. I think we've given people a belief that everyone's voice matters. In the issue with poverty, that no matter who you are in the city, you do count, you do matter, and it's important that your voice is heard, because for this city to improve, for our system to improve, for the education to improve, everyone has to be taken care of. Everyone has to be involved, and everyone needs to be nurtured along, because otherwise we're going to continue to struggle academically, socially, economically as a city. It's not going to change. So those things, I believe, are pluses, and I'm proud to say that a lot of that is because of this commission. I think we've opened some doors and opened some eyes to things that weren't possible before we actually formed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to volunteer?
I will, first of all, thank the many contributors to our various public hearings who did not have to participate in this process, but I think we have gotten a fairly open and responsive contribution from most of the people who've come before the commission, especially the trustees who did decide to come before the commission and give their points of view, whatever they might have been. They did come, 5 of the trustees. And I think that adds something to this commission, because after all, they're the ones responsible for overseeing the district, and whatever is done or not done, they are the ones elected to carry out that responsibility. But we've had a lot of good community support as well. And I'm always impressed by, not just by what people say, but by the meaning behind what they say as well. And in some of these meetings, even when people did not speak English, they came with a very heartfelt, emotional attachment to public education. I haven't heard any real bashing of public education at our hearings. I've heard really much sympathetic support of public education, and I get the impression, I would guesstimate that of the 9 hearings and additional input that we've gotten throughout the district, I would guess over 95% of the people who came were supportive of public education. And that's just a guess, but I mean, it could be off a few points, and I find that very impressive. I was really expecting a lot more, perhaps, of a different view, but my impression is that it has confirmed what I believe about public education. I think most people who come out are very supportive of Dallas ISD being a public institution and an independent school district. So I found that very rewarding, and I think everyone who did give that to us, it added something to this process. Because as far as I'm concerned, I had originally thought that this process would take longer, simply because a slower approach would just be more deliberate. But really, it's a good thing that we've done what we've done, because we've gotten very good input very fast, and in a 6-month period of time. So I think that has worked out very well, and I'm very pleased about that. I would like to pass out a document just for your consideration, and I'll come back to this later.
Good, thank you. Do you want to pass it out now?
Yeah. I'll pass it
Can
out.
we get some help? Yeah. Good,
Are
thank
you
you.
done? Because I'll pass it out.
I'm gonna get those too.
And don't forget,
Okay.
the 2 Commissioner Blackburn and then
Nice, guys.
Ricardo and then Stephanie.
Ricardo. And Stephanie. Okay, let's go around, be sure we get back to everybody. Have one.
Is this yours?
Edwin, you want to go next, or who? I don't want to just randomly, anybody? Kevin, Commissioner, I'll use that thing.
I've got a few thoughts.
Yeah. I'm trying to work both sides of the room, guys, so I'm not picking on you. I always get accused of going to my left. It's not a political
I
thing.
did hear him. I was looking at the document. My apologies. I didn't mean to. No, go ahead.
Yeah, just let
I would like to thank all of the commissioners and coming into this process. I don't think I knew what to expect, and I'd like to echo many of the comments that I've heard throughout this process, that we have really come together as a group that most importantly respects each other's opinions and listens not only to each other but to the public as well. I have not been involved in many public kinds of processes before. The more private processes that I've been involved in, being on kindergarten boards or nonprofit boards, were seldom as collegial and as welcoming as this group is, and I thank you all for a great experience so far. I think that everybody shares a lot of the opinions and the ideas that they'll probably be talking about some of the other things, but I wanted to talk for just a few minutes about the governance issue. And while I find our school board to be not modeling the kind of behavior for our children that I would wish that they did all the time, I nevertheless would leave the board unchanged. But in thinking about this district, and with the understanding, I guess, that I've been paying attention to the DISD since I entered DISD at the age of 6. And through my mother's career as a teacher and a principal, and then through my wife's career, and through a short time when I was employed as a substitute teacher, I think that for many years, I have been watching this district, and the one thing that I think is that there's an opportunity for this district to step out of the box is that I think that one of the reasons that the board continues to bump along in a somewhat dysfunctional fashion from year to year, and that's not focusing just on this board, but on boards in the past as well. Because there have been times in our history when the board has been seen as being more the problem than the solution in Dallas. And I think that what it really comes down to is that the governance structure within the administration of the district, the superintendent level down, is obsolete. And the superintendent's position needs to be eliminated. This district is too big, and God is not coming to save the DISD. This district, I believe, needs a working executive committee of the best professionals hired by an executive committee of the best professionals in the community in conjunction with the board to develop a leadership environment that is not authoritarian, that focuses on things like SBDMs and community schools and positive discipline outcomes. And I think that the way to get there is by running the district in a way that is respectful of parents and teachers and really looks at the bottom up, starting with their pre-K programs and coming up and bringing the district up from the bottom by using a cooperative, engaging governance system that says to parents, you can drop your kids off, but guess what? You must participate. You have to participate. It is a requirement that you participate. We become more focused on demanding that the public take responsibility for the schools. And when we do that, we're going to be sending the message all the way up through the system. And if we remove, I think the district is too big to be run by one person. And I realize that in this case, the superintendent doesn't run everything, but he's ultimately responsible for everything. And he answers to the board in this case. And I think that we could look at trying a different way. An executive committee of 5 or 7 people highly respected in their individual fields. A person who is the top-notch pre-K person in the United States, a top-notch person in the financial area. And we have some of those people, and I know some of those people are already here, and some of them have done great things for the district. I was on the Citizens Budget Review Commission, so I know that the district has done really well in a lot of areas. But the thing is that we still have this authoritarianism thing. We still have we still have teachers who feel intimidated. We still have this thing from the top down. And, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I've only been around 56 years, you know, in the DISD, so, but it's the same thing. It's the same problem. It's the same lack of a solution. Knowing what the problems are is not the same as working with a group like this commission has worked to find solutions. You know, you can theorize about the problems, but working toward the solutions is a whole different thing. And I would love to see us depart in a radical way hate to use that word in Dallas, but I would depart in a radical way to form satellites of governance down through the feeder patterns, and would start at the top with an executive committee working closely with the school board, working closely with an executive hiring committee, where people balance each other and where nobody does things that land us in the newspaper all the time in a negative way. When you have ultimate authority, you're going to do goofy stuff, whether it's, I mean, all you got to do is go back and read the newspapers for the last 30, 40 years, and you'll see it. I mean, we've had time after time when the newspapers have presented the district as a place where scandal is rife. I don't really see it that way. I see it as a place that, in spite of that stuff, has been highly functioning for some parts of the district, in a really bad failure in the other parts of the district, and that's the part. Our lowest income, our poorest kids. That's the place where we have to pour the resources, and I don't believe that the good ideas come from one person and filter down, or from. I believe that the collaboration that we've seen in the community is the way that those good ideas come up, and that people believe in them. They're not edicts passing down a chain of command. They're activism in the community that knows what the problem is and knows how to fix it, and brings those things forward. And I would like to see us in the end produce a strongly worded suggestion. I love Julie's idea about an organizational structure. I've been thinking about the very same thing. Does that actually exist anywhere? And I remember from CBRC that there is something sort of like that, but it's not nearly detailed enough. But I think that in the end, we should have something that is in the strongest terms possible tells the board that we have reached a crisis point in the old system, and that system clearly, as indicated by the SOPS petitions, the people that have come out for our meetings, wherever you've listened, you have seen that we have a crisis, and everyone wants it fixed, and no one is willing to continue with the status quo.
Thank you. I'm going back and forth. Commissioner Isenhusen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the colleagues who have spoken thus far for their very, very challenging but heartfelt and right on target sentiments. So I thank you all. I also just want to start off my comments by thanking each of the commissioners for their service and for my opportunity to work with them. It has been a growth process for me, and I hope for you as well. I sent an email to you all some time ago with this Thomas Jefferson quote that I want to start my remarks off with. And Thomas Jefferson said, "Educate and inform the mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty." Educate the mass of the people. If I would say one thing that I think has been a major outcome of this commission process, it is engaging the mass of the people. I think our community meetings, the opportunity for folk to come to present to us, is a model that this Board of Education, I think, could benefit from. What I noticed most when we were in the community, whether people were for or against the charter, but the opportunity for them to give voice to their feelings was very important. And that process has got to open itself up for the preservation of the democracy. I think a democracy is dependent on an elected body to represent it, and the quality of that body, the people have got to decide. When folk are doing well, they put them back in. When they aren't doing well, they need to remove them. I think part of understanding the quality of representation is being engaged with the process, having the opportunity to engage in the process, having the opportunity to review the process, having the opportunity to view the process. So to that end, I would want to just make the following initial observations, Mr. Chair. Under the 4 areas that we were charged with, and the first is governance. The governance subcommittee has met several times. We will be presenting our findings to the body at large once we conclude our meetings and our research. But my initial thinking on those issues are as follows. At the campus level governance, I think that principals have to be empowered to run their campuses and not receive dictations on how to run the campuses. A one-size-fits-all model does not work in Dallas Independent School District, Frisco Independent School District, or any independent school district. And I would agree with Commissioner Veazey that just given the sheer size of this district would make that impossible. I think that we need to go back and follow the law on site-based decision-making. It's a good law where you include the people in collaborating with school folk on the kinds of schools that they want to have, should have for their children. We've gotten away from that. It's almost as though we don't value people. So at the campus level, I believe that principals ought to be more empowered than they are now. Of course, having the right principals is going to be important to the process as well as having site-based decision-making bodies that collaborate with principals on an ongoing basis to further the progress and processes for children on those respective campuses. At the central office, I think that governance has got to be where central office sees themselves as serving schools and not schools serving them. I think we've got the tail wagging the dog. And we've got to reverse that to have the dog wag the tail. When Chad Woolery, were you on the board then, Mr. Flores? Jerome, were you on the board when Chad was superintendent? No?
Yes.
Yes. You will recall that Chad Woolery divided up the central office so that there were service teams out there servicing the respective schools. So there was a one call from the schools to one central place. It happened to be in the sub-districts at that time, where they could get immediate service from every department. He essentially divided up this humongous thing called central staff that is growing by the minute into 9 mini departments to service schools. That was their total function. And I submit that should be the only function of a central staff, is to service and support schools and kids. Now, how you do that from home, I don't know. That's another issue. At the board level, this process has just reinforced to me the need for elected members of anybody to hear from the people on a continuous basis. I haven't gelled this in my mind, but I think every board district ought to have a mini advisory committee composed of teachers, parents, perhaps a student, business people, almost a mini SBDM, that the board is required, the board representative for that respective district is required to meet with once each 6 weeks to hear from the people. It is my impression that board members do hear from people, but it is a small, inclusive, exclusive club, and not from the people at large. And I think that we've got to come up with a process that allows for people to be heard. Again, it is the only thing that would preserve this democracy, is to hear from the masses and to educate the masses. Relationships based on respect and mutuality of purpose is where this district has got to move, and the people who are leading it have got to go. Building relationships of respect and mutuality of purpose. And perhaps we can help them to do that. The other area, governance was the first one. The other one was curriculum. We've heard everybody that's come forward talk about pre-K. And I support totally a pre-K program of quality. Just to have pre-K will not ensure anything. So that I would hope that this body could work with the board or put into a charter. I don't know which way we're going yet, but whichever way we go, pre-K, a quality pre-K program, inclusive of professional development so folks know what they're doing with and for children, is included. I would think also in the curriculum we want to look at those transition years where we seem to lose kids between grades 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and then 8 and 9. There are some things that we have to look at and do to make sure that those transition years continue to help our kids to grow and become what they need to become. The other area was accountability. I would suggest, as are many people across this country, there's a whole movement about too much testing. We are testing instead of teaching. And then we wonder why the kids don't do well on the test. Well, they haven't been taught. So I would suggest that the accountability subcommittee, and I'd like to come to one of your meetings because I do have something to present to you on that whole notion. That's about developing kids, not developing programs. And you don't develop kids by overly testing them. Under the budget issue, I just think we have to put more monies on campuses which are directed by the campuses. And it goes back to that initial notion of a site-based decision-making committee working with principals and school staffs to develop programs and direction to move those kids as fast as they can. One size does not fit all. It never has, and it never will. Those conclude my initial comments.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Well, Commissioner Freeman,
I'm writing notes. Come back to me.
you're ready? Commissioner Gutierrez.
Okay, so far.
Pardon me?
I'm just listening right now.
Okay, Commissioner Blackburn.
I'm sorry, I apologize for arriving late. What's our topic?
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and whether that requires a charter or not.
Which is,
So with removing tongue from cheek, we are having an open discussion on our meaning here. What have you learned? What do you think? Where should we be going? What's worked for you? What hasn't?
I have a couple more notes to take down. You mind if I speak after
No,
that?
not at all. You can yield your time. Commissioner Garza.
I wanted other folks to talk first. I never turn away an opportunity.
Well, before you start, will you yield back? I, again,
Yes.
was remiss. No, we have a current trustee. Please raise your hand. A past trustee. Go ahead. Commissioner, did I miss any past elected, future elected, currently elected, people who want to be elected but have not declared? Are we all good? Okay. Let the record reflect at 7:15, the chair rectified his mistake one more time. I yield back to Commissioner Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to say that it's been an honor serving on this commission. And every comment I've heard so far significantly, I think, supports my idea that you've done an excellent job as chairman. Even though many folks thought, secondly, about the process that you'd laid out would be too long, it's turned out to be a great process of opening doors, allowing opportunities for people to come to the table and address issues, trustees to be able to address the issues and administration answer that, and there has been some change. So, Mr. Chairman, before I begin all my remarks, I just want to say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the direction and, staying firm and moving forward and having these 28 meetings that we had in such a short period of time. As a former trustee, let me just say that I never thought of us as dysfunctional. I felt that we all represented different points of view, and at the end of the day, we were there for one mission, and that's to educate young children and to give them an opportunity to do better than their parents did. And I firmly believe that every trustee I served with and every trustee that serves today has that same purpose in mind. As other commissioners have indicated, trustees took the lead from some of our meetings, and they had their own town hall meetings, and as a result of that, I think administration began to change some of their positions, and there was more transparency in what the goals and what the job descriptions were. So that's been very good, and I commend trustees for doing that. What has this current board done? They've made meals free to all. When I was a trustee, you could only have the free meals if you filled out a form. And we know that the older you are, the prouder you are, and you just don't want to fill out that form. Well, the current trustee says, hey, we know that what this district is. So that's been very good. I've seen many trustees do community meetings. When I first came on the board, I went to Trustee Blackburn, and he showed me how to do it, and I followed his lead many a time. So trustees are doing community meetings all the time. I would do those and partner with the city council. And I did hear from the parents. In my current job, one of the first criticisms I hear from many elected representatives and senators are, I wish we could do a law that required parents to be involved in their kids' education, but you can't do that. You can't require that. But they realize that with parental involvement, teachers come to the table, children's are more, they learn more and they achieve more. I think that's a given. We can't dictate what parents do. All we can do is demonstrate to parents, if you do this, this can be the results for your child. You tell us what you want to do. And what I loved to see when I was a trustee is the schools that would organize these Saturdays where you get all teachers, parents, and everybody, and those kids who weren't going to school or were missing, or for whatever reason, we went knocking on all those doors and said, Jerome, we haven't seen you at school. We want you there. And you talk to Jerome's parents, and we haven't seen Jerome at school. We'd love to have him there. What is it going to take? And with me was the superintendent, and with me were assistant superintendents at that time, and the parents. We turned around and got a lot of kids back in school by doing those activities. So it happens every day in the DISD. And some principals, they're spending so many hours, and I commend them for doing that. And I commend the teachers for taking time to go out and do that extra step and bring those kids back into school. So there are some great things. And I agree with my fellow commissioners that it must be an elected board because they are answerable to the people and the teachers and all the voters, and it should always remain that way. Now, whether they go back and hold community meetings, that's their decision. And the voters will realize if you don't hold community meetings, guess what? Come election time, how come you weren't like Trustee Blackburn? I see him out there all the time. In fact, I think he just had a holiday lunch that he gave something to all the teachers and principals in the area. So, I mean, there are trustees that are doing things, and we need to recognize that and commend that. Many of the successes that I see this commission has done, I want to give credit to 3 different areas. Number one, the media. Without the media sending our message every day, social media and in print, parents wouldn't know what's going on. Number 2, I want to thank the teachers. Do you know how courageous it must have been for those teachers knowing that when they're coming talking to us, there's no one covering their back? They have to answer to somebody at their school, but yet they still came and they talked to us and they gave us, this is what's happening. I commend them, and I wish there was a way I could thank them. But just to say that thank you for what you do for our kids. And number 3, I just want to thank the parents and students. There was tears in my eyes as I saw the many students come and talk to us. The elementary, the middle school, the high school. And they weren't all from our tag schools. They were just the comprehensive schools. It was beautiful to hear them say, in their own words, what they want in an education. So I think there has been success. Commissioner Ranger, I love your proposal. I would just ask, that is in the whereases, we have a whereas that say that we will do universal pre-K for everyone. I don't care how much money your parents make. And number 2, whereas we will reduce testing, period. There has to be another method there's enough tests going on. We don't need additional district testing. You use whatever the feds are requiring us and use that as your benchmark and you move forward. Okay? We just have to stop it. I mean, I know in my neighborhood, we heard it because they said, you're going to test my kindergarten and pre-K kids? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? So I would just ask the Commissioner that you add those 2 whereases in there, and I look forward to voting on that. January 5th is it?
Will do.
Okay.
And we're going to get back and let you explain that.
And lastly, I want to say, there have been many superintendents we've had, and I believe in that system of superintendents for schools, that had the vision and understood how complex this district was. In the 60s, you would have all superintendents that were former educators and all teachers. I think today, at least when I was on the board, it was interesting to see assistant superintendents of business services, and that was a person that actually kind of built a couple of football stadiums and other complex high-rises and things like that. We had different type of people in there, not all educators. If we needed business, that expertise was brought in. It was interesting when I first came in as a trustee, and I learned that if you were a 3rd grader, there was about 30 different books that you would use depending on which school you were at. And by the time I left, there was only 1 book that was used. Now you say, why is that important? Well, if you're a 3rd grader, and unfortunately the history of the DISD has been transition of mobility, you didn't worry about, am I behind? Are they teaching something completely different? You could still move on with your life, and you could learn. So the district has done many great things. We never told that message because I think we were a little embarrassed we had so many different books, but it is what it is. We help teachers, we help kids, things have gotten better. Over the past 20 years, Bill, how many billions of dollars in bonds have we authorized to voters?
20 years? 2.7 years.
2.7 billion. I thought it was almost 2.7.
2.5, sorry.
2.5.
1.2 and 1.37.
Yeah. $1 billion the voters have done, and we have built new facilities for our kids and our teachers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So there are great things happening. However, the method in which we have to operate it, Board of Trustees, I firmly believe in, and just hold the superintendent accountable and ask him to bring in experts in the different areas so that we do take advantage of that. So,
Okay.
thank you very much, and I look forward to discussing Commissioner Ranger's proposal.
Okay. Who? Yes? No? Commissioner Flores.
So I want to echo a lot of the accolades and warm feelings for everybody. I mean, Commissioner Sandell, I think I agree with her 100%. I mean, I think that we've bonded in ways that none of us ever expected that we would. I want to echo Commissioner Ranger's comments about the support that we heard out in the community for public education and the importance that it is for all of us. And hopefully we all share those goals. Commissioner Vesey, I agree with you. I mean, I think we need radical reform. We need, and I will use the word, but I've used the word before many, many times, and was reelected 3 times, even though I used it. And really start to change the way that we think about education. We've used the same system of education for over 100 years in which we're transitioning individuals, young people, from working in the farms to working in factories. That's the system we use today, which is the one best system is what it's called. And we continue to use it. And everybody still uses it. And you have to ask yourself, why are we still using the same system that was designed to take people from farms into factories when we have no factories left in this country, predominantly. High tech we do, but other than that we don't. So why are we now thinking about new radical ways to change from educating kids from thinking about going into factories to thinking to going into the workplace of the future, which is services based, which is based on what you know, not necessarily what you do. I mean, this is the future. And we're not getting our kids ready. Why do you think we have a bell at the beginning of the day and a bell at the end of the day? Because it's the same as a whistle at the beginning of the day, work day, at the end of the work day. Why do we have set tasks where one widget and they work on one widget and we hold them accountable through tests to say, well, what does this person know? Which one of us in this real, in the service environment we live in actually works by themselves? We don't. We work in teams.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
I like what you said, we're no longer training people from the farm. We're training people from the suburbs, from the inner city. We don't even have the same people to take to a different place. We've got different people that go to different places. Okay.
That's right, and these young people, absolutely. And these young people are going through that transition. And what are we doing to provide a system of education that matches that need to transition into this, service, high energy, high input, high mental capacity environment? And are we doing a good job? I mean, this is a systemic problem. And this isn't a problem of DISD or Frisco or LA or Chicago or whomever. This is an American problem. And, we've heard some ideas, some initial ideas of how to go about that. I mean, there are experts, going back to the experts, have thought about these ideas and kind of what the future would look like. Personalized learning environments, project-based learning environments, things where you're actually really, getting these kids ready for the real workforce, where they're going to be working in teams and they're going to be held accountable in teams, and a project will begin and a project will end. And guess what? 5 years from now, those career skills are going to be completely different.
You know what I fear? I fear that one day we're going to be the outsourcing people.
Are you yielding? Are you okay?
Yeah,
with that?
sure.
I'm just trying not to.
We're having a discussion.
Yeah, I fear that we'll be the ones that are outsourced. They'll come to us to do it. Are we educating a force like that?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what the workforce is going to look like in the future. And there are a lot of people who thought very long and hard about what that future workforce is going to be, in the Texas Workforce Commission and national commissions and all sorts of things. But we do know that those factory jobs just aren't going to ever come back to the United States.
Right.
I mean, they're just not. So let's just assume that that's the case, and start thinking about, what the future is going to look like, and how, our kids will have to change careers multiple times during their lives. And they're going to have to reinvent themselves, re-educate themselves, retrain themselves, I don't care what you call it. But those skills that they learn at one point are going to change. And guess what? We don't test those. Those soft skills that need to, go-to-itiveness, that drive, that motivation to say, yeah, I got kicked down, but I'm going to pick myself up. There is no test for that. At least not today. There are no classes that teach that. And that really are some of those soft skills that are not part of our curriculum today. They're, just having basic business skills, personal finance skills. All those 18-year-olds get those credit cards and suddenly spend all this money and think, oh, now I need to pay it back. Oh my gosh. Well, guess what? We have nothing for that. I mean, real life training. And I think that that's something that we're not seeing and that nobody's discussing. And, it has been proposed. When I was on the school board, we did a lot of these tinkering and twisting and feeding the kids. I mean, yeah, it's a great thing to do, There's no better policy than putting milk into babies, I think Winston Churchill said one time. Commissioner Newsom, I want to, echo her sentiments about, what are we going to do? How are we going to get our communities engaged again? How are we going to get the SBDMs, running again and doing what they're supposed to do? I mean, we passed a policy when I was on the school board, called Managed Instruction with Earned Empowerment. And it goes along the lines of aligning the curriculum, so folks are doing about the same thing about the same time every day, so that when kids move schools, they fall into the same, track where they were before, if they do move. But then for those principals that earn the empowerment, for those schools that earn the empowerment from doing things right, that we gave them more, autonomy. So there isn't magic what needs to be done, but there's a lot to be done. And so, in addition to thanking the fellow commissioners, I want to thank all the folks that came out and visited with us and spoke to us. It's unfortunate we didn't get more folks. As we've had a discussion about regular folks coming out, and that's great. And I think that one of the things that I liked about this commission is, we were all appointed. We were all selected. We're not elected. We were selected. On the one hand. On the other hand, we're not running for office. People can come to us and visit with us, and I've talked to teachers and I've talked to parents. I've had home rule commission meetings up in the northern part of town, just because it's convenient for me, to hear what folks had to say. And they had a lot of ideas, and you got to take the good with the bad, right? I mean, the good, district has progressed, district fund balance is better than ever. I think it's healthy to have a conversation about public education. We've had a lot of folks coming out, and I think that we're all, at least what I felt of my fellow commissioners, is that we do have a shared purpose. That we do want to educate kids, and we do want to figure out how to best treat our employees, and we do want to figure out, how to get the best people on the bus and the best leadership in our buildings. But on the other hand, we also need to, really face facts. And the facts are that, there are a lot of our kids that aren't graduating ready for the workforce, whichever way it's measured. We need to support our little ones who come into our schools that are behind, and make sure that by third grade they're reading at grade level so that they don't end up in prisons, which is how, by the way, for those of you who don't know, how Texas decides how to build, how many prisons it's going to need is with third grade literacy.
The whole country is doing that, not just Texas.
Well, Texas, this is, I know Texas, I don't know the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
That's the benchmark.
So, so accolades to all the folks. Downside, we heard from a lot of interest groups. We heard, in a sense, we always talk about all the lobbyists and the people. Well, guess what? We got lobbied. And we need to recognize that we got lobbied. And once we recognize that and put that filter on, we go, wait a minute. Man, well, now all the stuff the parents have said, how come they're not treating me well in my school, or I'm not being welcomed by the leadership of the school or the administration of that school, or I don't feel that I'm being treated right even though I'm paying these folks all this money. So I think that we need to take that all into account. Whether we write a home rule charter or not, I think the discussion has been healthy. I think that the board and the administration has heard the folks that have come to visit with us and other folks in the community as this conversation is had. Does it make sense to have mini feeder pattern advisory councils or something up? You know, that was something I advocated when I was in the school board. You know, and having the transparency and being able to build those SBDMs and, hold, folks accountable for having real SBDMs that make real decisions on a campus. I mean, those are the kinds of things that through policy can be done, from the school board's perspective. But we also do have to recognize that at the end of the day, one person has to be in charge. And the state statute says that the one person in charge is, fill in the blank what you want to call them. In Chicago, it's a CEO. Like Arnie Duncan was. Here in Texas, it's the superintendent. In Florida, they call them something else. They're actually elected.
Chancellors.
Yeah, chancellors in New York City. But at the end of the day, one person has to make the decision. When I was on the board, we switched it so we had 22 feeder pattern executive directors, which cost us a fortune on the one hand. And then we need to recognize that if we do want to pay professional folks, it's going to cost a boatload of money. When we had the Star Employee Commission, we explored the possibility that with the other HR directors that were helping us, that we perhaps should really hire somebody who's just a super HR person. So we priced this out, and we found out that one of these folks would go for about 30% more than what we were paying the superintendent. So let me say that again. They would go now, and that was the previous superintendent. So basically if we wanted just kind of an even halfway decent top HR person to run a business of 20,000 employees, we would have to pay him like $450,000 plus pennies and maybe bonuses, because that is what's out there in the work environment in Dallas. So, I'm all for, getting great folks. I'm all for paying them, but you have to pay them. I mean, that's just a top IT person out there, or, top CEO, a top CFO, a top operations folk. They are not cheap, and you have to look at your market. And let's say our marketplace is the U.S. Well, they're going to be very, very expensive. Now, I'd be supportive of that if that's what the commission wants to do and make that recommendation that we pay folks what they're worth. I also think that we should have teachers making $100,000 a year, because I think that great teachers should be able to do that and make that kind of money and reward it. Make more than principals in some cases. But those are just my radical. So I just want to thank the community, the Board of Trustees for giving us this opportunity, Bob for his outstanding leadership, everybody, every single one of you for being so cordial and friendly, and those of you that I had an opportunity to have lunch with, of course, my good friend Jerome Garza that I've served on the school board with, and everybody. I just want to thank you. It's been it continues to be a great experience.
Mr. Wise, if I could.
I'm trying to get Isaac.
It's fine. That's fine.
There you go. Are you okay? Yeah. All right.
Just wanted to say to Edwin that while we have not had a lot of people physically with us, there are a lot of people watching us on YouTube and these proceedings, and so people are really getting a lot of information and then giving us feedback based on what they're watching. So more eyes are on us, which I think is a good thing, because people are watching the process than we think. And then my final thing is to Jerome. Free lunch was not just determined by the board. It was determined by the federal government. Once the district hit above 85% poverty level, the government gives everybody free lunch.
So there really is a free lunch, is that what you're saying?
No, it literally is. The one city district hits above 85%, is declared a district of poverty, and so they all get the free lunch.
And free breakfast.
And free breakfast, yeah.
All right. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Vesey, and then I want to make sure everybody gets a turn. Commissioner Blackburn, you want to go next?
Sure.
I'm just going to yield a few minutes to Commissioner Vesey. And then Commissioner Freeman. and then you...
I'll talk eventually. I'm fine.
Okay.
And just, it's always hard having Jerome and Edwin at the same meeting, the two former trustees on either side. There's a lot of knowledge there and a lot of history, and I respect that and appreciate their perspective, and they've helped me a lot. But I just want to clarify that the statute may say that we need a superintendent, but it doesn't lay out the job duties of a superintendent. A superintendent can be a superintendent and still be held accountable by 4 other people on an executive committee, so that we don't have a king, a monarch, that we have something in a more cooperative. I just want. When I made that suggestion earlier, I didn't mean it to.
You had a grounding in a fact.
Yeah, well, I was thinking in terms of what the law required. I still do that just occasionally.
I think you told us at the beginning you went to law school, right?
It just a little bit.
Back there, right.
You don't have to explain radicalism. Just be radical.
Commissioner Freeman.
All right.
And who says we don't have a sense of humor? I thought I was the only one. Don't steal my jokes. Don't steal my jokes. Commissioner Freeman.
First of all, again, like everyone else has said, it's been an honor to be part of this. This is my first foray into the public realm here, and it's been an eye-opening experience on many levels. One of the big things that this experience has kind of forced me to do is to take stock of my educational experience, both when I was a student and being in the district for the last 5 years, which I realize, compared to a lot of the people that we've talked to and all of the people in this room, that experience is fairly minimal. But kind of synthesizing those thoughts and putting them together to form my idea of where I think things should go. And just to give you kind of a little capsule, my school was one of the 8 schools that was chosen to potentially adopt personalized learning. And
give us the name of your school for the record.
I work at Marsh Middle School, or Marsh Preparatory Academy, excuse me. We changed our name this year, so I'm still getting used to it. But so we're part of this process. We've been working on it for 8 months on this proposal. We've been doing research, site visits. We've tried out different things on campus. We were given a bit of money to test things out, and we were working for months doing research for creating this proposal. We presented our proposal last week, and it was incredibly exciting. We walk out of the proposal and we're talking about it, and we're like, we've tried to avoid the question of, we have these amazing plans for our school, these incredible things, these incredible, initiatives that we want to try out. What if we don't get it? What if we don't get picked? And we're like, no, let's avoid that question. Don't ask it. Don't put it into the universe. But, the fact is, we're walking out of there and we're so excited, but at the same time, it should not be this hard. It should not be so difficult to do something excellent. It should not be so hard to say that this is something that is phenomenal, this is something that is transformative, and this is something that only a handful of you can have. And I think that it's really upsetting, and a lot of these things we talk about and here, governance, accountability, these are all really big picture things that I realize have an impact, but my scope of inquiry, I suppose, is within the 4 walls of my classroom. And while it's easy to look at the big picture, I think it's also really easy to forget the little picture, which is what is going on in our campus. Mm-hmm. And I guess the thesis of my statement here is it should not be this hard. It should not be hard for schools to make sure that they have enough textbooks that have all the pages in them. It should not be difficult for schools to have high quality resources for teachers, and not just the suggested resources, but when I've got a classroom of 32 students where I've got a range of readers from pre-kindergarten to post-high school, one textbook is not necessarily going to serve the needs of that classroom, and it should not be so hard to find high quality resources and culturally relevant materials to engage my students in reading. It should not be so hard to collaborate with teachers. I was a while back, when they do the ACPs, for our ACPs, they have the ACP Film Festival, and I'm sitting in this room where we get a brief glimpse of the ACPs in order for the teachers to kind of see it. And I'm sitting in this room with 40 other 6th grade English teachers, and I'm thinking, first of all, I've never met any of these people before, and second of all, here are 40 sixth grade English teachers that range in experience from new to veteran, and I'm sure that they're all teaching exactly the same things that I am, and I'm sure that every single one of these people in this room is struggling to come up with materials and resources every single week, and it's a shame that we don't have more ways to collaborate and communicate with those people. And yesterday on NPR there was a story about Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a website that has sprung up because there are not enough good resources for teachers. It said last year they made $46 million, and the most incredible thing about it was that $46 million was made out of the pocketbooks of teachers. It wasn't paid for by school districts, it wasn't paid for by schools, it wasn't paid for by principals, it was paid for by teachers that have a need that is missing, and it's frustrating because they said next year they're projected to make $70 million. If they were a regular publishing company, they said they would be about a mid-level publishing company. They would be a competitive publishing company in that market, and that's a shame that that's coming out of my pocket, And I'll admit, I've used the website before because it's a lot better than some of the stuff that is free. And it should not be that hard. It should not be hard for a teacher to be both creative and effective at the same time. It should not be hard for teachers to be able to create whole educational experiences and also be held accountable for things. I remember when I was in high school, and I'm sorry I'm going on a bit of a rant, but I remember when I was in high school and my senior year, we were learning Greek drama, and we did this project where we had to paint a mask, and on the outside of the mask it was how the world sees us, and on the inside of the mask it was the part of us that the world never sees, and we had to write an essay in which we analyzed the mask that we had created. I would probably never be allowed to do that because it would require painting in my English class, and that is something that I did 10, 12 years ago, and it still sticks with me. And it's still something that was a resounding experience that I don't know that I could provide for my students because, it's too hard now. And it's the little things like it's too hard. It shouldn't be so hard to have working or effective bus routes. It shouldn't be so hard to have working air conditioning, to have functioning technology. It shouldn't be so hard to have toilet paper, And so I know we're taking a look at all the big picture things, and it's really easy to say, let's look at line items and let's look at, governance structure and let's look at those kinds of things. When you get down to it too, what really affects the day-to-day lives of children in this district are not necessarily, who's in the chair. It's, how many chairs do I have in my classroom? And so I guess when we start talking toward the second half of what we're doing here and the angle that we take, I think it's incredibly important. First of all, I don't think we should walk away with nothing. I know that there are people that may believe we should walk away with some sort of charter. There's some people who think we should shut it down now. I think that there are a couple important reasons that we shouldn't do that. One is, if we do that, I feel like this was an exercise in futility to just walk away and say, we started the conversation, but someone else gets to take it now, and we're going to walk away without something concrete. But I also think, second, that we owe it to my students, and we owe it to the students of this district to fill in those gaps, because those parts of the conversation are not being had. People aren't talking about the fact that teachers have to pay things out of their pocket. People aren't talking about the fact that those little needs aren't being met, and the little needs are the ones that the kids need the most. And so I guess I would put this out there to the commission that we take it as incumbent upon ourselves to at least come up with something, some charter or a list of recommendations or a list of initiatives or, demands, however you want to phrase it semantically, but there are things that are not happening that should be, and it just should not be that hard to make them happen, and that's all I have to say.
Well said.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, I can't avoid it. Thank you all for coming out. This has been insightful. I've learned, I've been able to share, and I've listened. Since the beginning until now, conversations have been taking place, and listening has been taking place. And I agree with you, Isaac, we shouldn't just walk away, because now some action needs to come into play, because our kids need this. We need this, because eventually our children are going to be caring for us. And if they don't have the education, then how will it be done? teachers are becoming more open with their thoughts on this, because initially there was fear of the unknown. What's going to happen next? Do I need to run? And there needs to be more teaching and not so much testing. And then I heard the transition grades, 3 and 4. If there was more teaching in the early childhood grades, then that transition wouldn't be so difficult, because the focus is on what's going to happen for the test rather than all those skills that are actually assessed when they get there that they miss it. I just even really think about talking with a science teacher. The skills on the science test aren't something that's just introduced in 5th grade. But if they're not focusing on just reading in the lower grade, then they would have gotten that science that they're assessed on in 5th grade. So there does need to be more teaching versus more testing. And like you said, quality, not just quality pre-K, but quality early childhood in general. Early childhood is pre-K through 3rd grade, and it needs to have knowledgeable individuals presenting the information and the skills to the students so that it can be utilized and it can be done in a beneficial manner. Perhaps universal pre-K is the answer. Other states engage in that. I question, why don't we have it? Sometimes I question, why is it optional for pre-K and kindergarten? Because I've taught 1st grade. When that student comes in and they've never been in school, they've never been outside the house until 1st grade. They've missed 2 years that perhaps could have been amazing. But I think walking away is not the answer. There were some things in this district that worked. And then somebody put it in their head to reinvent the wheel and try something else, and it didn't work, and they stopped. So stopping is not the answer. We should look at what worked and go from there. I think we should avoid the cookie cutter approach that is being pushed on everybody in terms of teaching. What works in one school is not going to work in another school. Sometimes what works in one classroom isn't going to work in the next classroom. So I think removing that cookie cutter approach is going to be pertinent to coming up with a solution. And I think listening, that's going to be the most important part, because you never know what's going on if you don't stop and listen. And I think that's my spiel.
Thank you.
Mi turno, huh?
I'm going to do it all in Spanish. I'm scared. I'll translate. There you go. I guess first of all, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity of being here. As I have said many a times, I'm a brand new mom to the district. But I felt it was important that we had a parent in this commission, perhaps just like me, that really doesn't know anything except about the little part of my cigarette, I haven't been like Mr. Visi, who has, his mom was a teacher and he's been in the district for 50 odd years, or I was gonna say your first name, Blackburn, Mr. Blackburn, I was gonna call him Lou. That his dad has been in the district also for a while, or Mr. Flores, who also is very well versed in what has been going on in the DISD. I was just stuck in my little PTA corner at Cigar Elementary in the corner of Walnut Hill and Webb Chapel. But what I have learned is that I think what I saw is that there's a lot of people that want to help. And what I noticed is that I think we need to figure out a way of how do we all become one and help each other out to help our schools. Because we saw a lot of groups, whether we want to call them special interest or not, that do say that they want to help. So how about we actually become a team and help our school? I think that's something that we saw. Everybody, like Mr. Ranger mentioned, everybody wants to help our public schools. So I think this was a good opportunity for them to get to know each other and know that they're not the only group out there that wants to help.
I think that's something that I think, they need to start exchanging phone numbers somehow. Something else that I saw is that I feel that within our district we need more communication, kind of like what Ms. Sandell mentioned. There's a bunch of people, but nobody knows what they do. I don't know if anybody has tried to call to get something done for their school, and they're like, call so-and-so at number 972, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and you call that number, and they're like, hey, you have to call somebody else. And then they send you to another number you just called, and you're going, what's going on? So, myself as a parent that are just trying to help one school is going on. This district is crazy. So we do need some type of roadmap that tells us, after you pass go, you need to go here and then go here. So I think a whole lot more communication and people actually knowing what they're doing would probably be something that's good. Another thing that I noticed is that with this process, we're actually listening to each other, whether I'm not talking about a commission, I'm talking people in general. Whether we agree to what we say or not, I think it's just really important that we're listening instead of just fighting. I think when we started this process, there was a lot of fighting. Oh, some rich guy is wanting to come take over my district, blah, blah, blah. And I think at one point it finally stopped and we were just actually saying, hey, we love the ISD and we want to make it better. This is my idea of how we can get there. And I think through all those ideas, we can actually find some sort of, maybe not a magic bullet, but a map of how do we get there? How do we actually get our kiddos to graduate to where they can choose to go to college if they want to, or start their own business if that's what they choose, or become, a firefighter, whatever it is, but at least they're going to be prepared, not what we are doing to our kids, and not giving them an education. Another thing that I think that was really important that we took out of all of this is what do our school need, and not in the form of somebody that's out of the district telling us what our school needs, or maybe somebody up in the administration building telling us what our school needs, or even the board of trustees, but actual teachers and parents, the people and principals, the ones that are actually every day with our kiddos, living their needs. Like, for example, something that's going on in my school is we have 4 TC units. That's total communication autistic. It's 4. One classroom, actually, it's supposed to be 4, but we have 3 because we don't have a teacher. And the one classroom doesn't even have tables for our students. So we're not the only school that this is going, happening to. It's many of them. And I think because those principals or those teachers feel that their pleas are falling on deaf ears, they're no longer speaking up. And I think with what we have done here, they're actually were able to speak, or their voice were actually heard. So I think that's really something important that I think the people and the trustees and Mr. Miles need to start listening to that. There is a lot of need, and they need to make sure that before they start building other schools or putting money somewhere else, that they first meet the needs of the schools that we have right now. Exactly. So I think that's something really important that we got. And as a parent, I think that this process has showed us that we do have a voice, that it's not just the school or the people that, answer the phones and call so-and-so and so-and-so, that we actually do have a voice, and we actually need to start using it. Because if we don't, then nobody's going to speak up on behalf of our children and the teachers and those principals. Because it's sad to say that sometimes, a principal calls and, hey, I need this for my school, and nothing gets done. I mean, to have a work order for over 6 months or to a year, that's really pathetic. I hear that the DISD has, I don't know how many millions of dollars, you mentioned it, and I don't know what it's called, and I'm going, oh my God, seriously? And we can't even get some exterminators out there to kill the roaches? You have got to be kidding me. That we don't have earphones for the kids because they're broken, but we have, hundreds of millions of dollars put aside. To me, that's kind of pathetic. I think it's about time that the people that are watching us on YouTube, hello everybody, hi mama, start paying attention and listening, and perhaps maybe going out to each and every single one of those damn schools and saying, hey, what do you need? Give me a list. Give me a wish list and make it hopefully not a wish list, but what are we gonna do list, and how are we gonna fix it list. So I'm actually very glad that we got to do this because those people, have a voice. So that's me.
Thank you. Commissioner Blackburn?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to echo the sentiments that were given earlier that, Mr. Chairman, you've done a great job in getting us together and how we're organized. Wasn't sure how this was going to happen when we first started, and it's worked out very, very well. And I really like you 14 people. Y'all are my friends. And I don't know, it took me a couple weeks or so before I really missed having the 2 community meetings every Saturday, because that almost forced you to have lunch with me. So I had a chance to talk to you, and after that, we weren't having lunch as much. But it has been a wonderful experience, and being someone who enjoys talking and conversing and relating with people, learning more about people. And I never really knew any of you before this experience, so I've known about you in different ways, and I never take what I hear, so to actually talk to people, it's been great. I've enjoyed it, and we are such a diverse group of our backgrounds, where we are today, and diverse in our thinking and our opinions and our ideas for what we're doing here. I just enjoy the fact that we can have different thoughts and have different opinions, and yet still speak openly about them and openly about the ideas. And at least for a person like me, it's not a matter of listening to your idea to figure out, okay, how do I poke a hole in that? But more so listening to your idea to see how can I understand why you think that way, because you're not the only one. That there are others behind you that think the same way, or others like you, or people may think slightly differently. But because I do like to converse, I do openly yield to any questions, comments that anyone may have on as I'm speaking, because I'm eventually going to get through everything else. Y'all been talking so long. So feel free to say and ask whatever you'd like. I'll go back to, I believe it was February, March or so, when this issue of home rule first came out in the paper, and I didn't know anything about it. I got caught off guard in a interview. Somebody asked me about it and was like, "Did you see this came in the paper yesterday?" I'm like, "Nope, did not." And read it very quickly before another interview the next day, and actually talked to some people who were involved with Support Our Public Schools and so forth. And I'll be very honest with you, as it came out and as people started talking about things, I told people not to sign the petition. I didn't want people to sign the petition because there were too many unknowns. Not that there was anything bad, but there were just so many. I don't want to rush into anything in my ignorance. I will always be ignorant. I just don't like rushing with it. And so that was the fear. What's the fear of what we don't know yet? And so I can remember even being on opposing sides of my pastor. And I'm only opposing with non-spiritual issues. But that just became a bigger thing. But yeah, we disagreed on that, and I didn't want people to sign a petition. And when asked about it during the campaign, and again, Ms. Foreman did a wonderful job and congratulations yet again to you. But during the campaign, we'd be asked a number of times about the petition and home rule and so forth. And I would often say to at least 2 or 3 different bodies that no, I didn't think people should sign the petition because it was either 1 year early or 1 year late. The only way it could be successful is if it was on the November 2014 ballot. Otherwise, we wouldn't have enough people to vote on it. And so what's the point? So if it does go through, then there must be something underhanded and somebody's trying to push it. They have their own agenda and all that. And I wanted to do whatever we could to avoid that. However, even though I didn't want it on the ballot, I did say that we should spend the next year discussing the possibilities. Because we don't necessarily have to have people sign a petition. We could have enough of the trustees that say, hey, I've heard from our community and they have these ideas of how to change it. Yes, let's go through with home rule in a positive manner. And so that's what I was looking forward to. So I didn't think people would sign the petition. Didn't think that they'd have enough signatures turned in, and I've been wrong on many occasions in 2014, so that was yet another. But since we are here, I have been open to what can we do now that we are here, and I'm so happy that the other commissioners have been thinking along the same lines. If there's anything that we want to change about the Texas Education Code, if there's anything that we believe could be changed about the state law for Texas and Texas Constitution pertaining to public education for the benefit of Dallas ISD, there's a process to change the state law, and we can introduce or get somebody to introduce a bill, and it can be discussed, and then we can convince a number of Texas representatives and a number of Texas senators to vote on it, and they can do that, and then we can make a change to the Texas Education Code. Or we convince about 8 of our friends to agree with us and say, hey, this is going to benefit Dallas ISD. As opposed to, hey, this is going to benefit Dallas ISD, but it may not be good for McAllen. It may not be good for San Antonio. Houston may not like this, because that's what they're going to say. They're not, the other representatives, they're not thinking about Dallas ISD. They're thinking about the people who elected them. And at this opportunity, we have a chance to say, hey, what can we do? Now, it's a small piece. Most of the things that are brought up to us, most of the issues, most of the problems, it's not something that involves the Texas Education Code, and it shouldn't. If people really want to help students, then they'll find a student, they'll find a classroom and help. I think during our last meeting, somebody brought that up, that the real change would be if each person found some student, connected with them, and mentored them. And so even if you're just checking on your homework, call them every day, call them once a week. Hey, did you do your homework this week? How worth it? It's a 5-minute conversation. I think that would be more than what we have now. But, that's a matter of working with the student. And, we also have teachers who can work in a classroom. We can help a classroom, or we can become part of an SBDM and help a campus. And then beyond that, there are administration issues that can be changed, and that affects what goes on at the school level. And then that administration, well, that's kind of governed by our board, and the board kind of operates under a set of rules, board policy that says you can do whatever you want as long as you don't, break these policy rules. And then the board has to operate under a bigger net that says you can do whatever you want as long as you don't break these state laws, this Texas Education Code. So that's a very small bit of items. In fact, we heard from the trustees, we heard from the superintendent and others that said, no, they're not really constrained, or they don't see any constraints by the Texas Education Code. I'm sure there's still some things they would like change, but publicly they told us no, or privately, no one has told me anything differently than what I've heard publicly. Let me put that out there. But yeah, so I think that there are a certain set of rules which do not make sweeping changes to what's going on. And in fact, I think a lot of people felt like, okay, well, coming onto the commissioners, they're trying to restrict what our trustees are doing. And I said just the opposite. I want to give our elected trustees as much leeway, even more leeway than they have now, to make the necessary changes that need to be made in order to improve Dallas ISD. There have been a number of times in our meetings that people have used football analogies, and so I'll throw another one out. Unfortunately, last night, the Cowboys didn't have any fumbles, and Tony Romo didn't fumble any snaps or anything. It happened once or twice earlier in the year that the center snaps the ball, and it doesn't really get there. And so the quarterback doesn't have it, so the ball's on the ground. And I feel like that's what happens with what a lot of people say to us, and in terms of some of the things that some people say we should do. That the ball is snapped, and the quarterback doesn't get the ball, and so it's down there, and we're on the other side, and we're going to get the ball, and it's like they're yelling, hey, don't touch it. Stop going for the ball, just leave it right there. And I'm thinking, well, we can pick up the ball and do something with it. Say, nope, leave it alone. The ball is down there, don't touch it. I'm like, but we're trying to get to the goal. and I need to get this ball to that goal. Nobody's touching me. Nobody's over my shoulder right now. I can get this ball and say, leave the ball. Just let the play die. And I don't want to do that. I want to pick up the ball. I may not get to the goal, but at least I can get a little closer. We're not going to get any closer if we don't pick up the ball. And so I don't want the ball to just lie there. I don't want people to tell me not to touch the ball. And that's an adversarial view of it, to almost think that, in fact, what happens is that I think a lot of people say we got into this charter, this home rule charter discussion because of Support Our Public Schools, because they said, here are a number of things that we think should happen through this process, through this home rule charter process, so sign a petition. So a lot of people think, well, if there is a charter, then if you're in favor of any type of charter, if you're in favor of any type of home rule process, you must be in agreement with what Support Our Public Schools has said. And I've stated a number of times, but I fully disagree with that. I think that in this case, Support Our Public Schools, they knew there wasn't a quarterback back there. They knew the process, that when they hiked the ball, there wasn't going to be a quarterback. Nobody else was going to get it. And I don't really think that they are opposed to it. I don't know everybody that's on Support Our Public Schools, but I don't think they are against students, against education. I don't think they're money-grubbing people. I don't know them all. I know some, and I know that they are strong supporters of education in whatever capacity they may have. But I don't think we necessarily have to look at it as us versus them, or anybody else versus anybody. It's just a matter of how can we improve the education system within Dallas ISD boundaries. So that's what I look at. And I've asked the trustees and I asked the superintendent, my standard question was, well, what is it that you'd like the community to do? Because if there is a charter that is proposed, if a charter gets from here, it's probably going to die. It may not be voted upon by at least, I think, 20% of 25% of the registered voters. That's a long shot. Between now and I guess the end of next year, very little chance that happens. But it will be on a ballot, and it will probably be the only time, and maybe the only issue, in which all Dallas ISD has DISD, the same DISD issue on their ballot. And when that spotlight hits, I want Dallas ISD to be ready to say, hey, here's what we need you to do. I want them to be ready to say, here are the good things that are going on in Dallas ISD. Yes, there will be some things that come to light and say, here are some of the problems, let's go ahead and fix these. But at the same time, I want us to be able to show all of the great things. To bring my pastor up again, he said that when he first came to Dallas, when he first came to our church a number of years ago, that he was put in charge of the youth. So he was teaching the youth in Bible study. And he said, and he learned from that experience that he wasn't very good at teaching youth. And I had to tell him after saying that 2 or 3 times, it's like, I wish you would stop saying that, because I was one of those youth when you were teaching me. And so if you were a bad teacher, there's a problem. And it's the same thing with Dallas ISD. I don't like people to say negative things about Dallas ISD, because I'm a product of Dallas ISD. I put my children in Dallas ISD, and that's by choice. We could have lived someplace else, but I've always told people, hey, I want a 214 area code. I'm going to be in Dallas ISD, and I knew which schools that my kids were going to go to. Other things popped up, and unfortunately that school has been shuttered, but that's okay. I believe in Dallas ISD, and I wanted us to have a great education discussion, not just with Dallas ISD people, and we still have time. I want us to talk to Dallas ISD people. I want us to talk to the suburbs. I want us to talk to the charter school parents, the charter school teachers, because I want to know, what do you think is so great about those places? When I was growing up, Oak Cliff, went to Skyline and so forth, and I even told people, I don't really care for the D-Burbs, the Duncanvilles and DeSotos and so forth, because they may have a little money. They seem to have extra advantages. But I want to know, what is it that people think is so great about that? we don't have as many parents who vote in trustee elections, but we have a lot of parents that vote with state funds, and they vote with their children because they send them to charter schools. They don't have to. There's not a single charter school that has to exist. They are only open, and they only exist because some parent says, I don't care if Dallas ISD is free, if they give me free transportation, if they give a free lunch and a free breakfast to my child. I don't care what type of programs Dallas ISD has. I'm going to go ahead and register at this charter school and send them to that. I've heard that charter schools may not be great, but I'm still going to send my child to a charter school. I think it was Madison that we heard a community member who stood up and spoke and said that years ago that she was down in Central Texas and she heard about how bad Dallas ISD was, and she just thought that that was awful. And then when she ended up being here in Dallas and she thought, or she had children, she said that she does everything that she can to keep her child out of Dallas ISD because of how bad it is. And so instead, she puts her child in a charter school and makes sure that whatever she has to do to keep her child in that charter school and out of Dallas ISD, then that's what she's going to do. And then right after that, she said, we don't need this charter thing. Evidently, we need to keep Dallas ISD just as it is. However, it's not good enough for her child. Well, Dallas ISD is what it is, and I want it to be better. I want to go up against every charter school system there is, every district. And so that some parent has to ask themselves, why would I send my child to that charter school? Why would I move to a suburb when there's DISD? When I hear about all the good things of DISD, why would I choose anything else? I look forward to that. Now, I don't think we can do that between now and June. Now, I don't think it'll happen in 2 years, but we can take a step. We can get closer. We can get a few yards down closer to the goal. But that's what I want to do. I want to beat the charter schools. And I don't know how we're going to define that. It doesn't have to be by test scores. We'll do something. And I think there are great people in the district. There are great people on this commission, community members, and thank you to everyone who's been showing up to our community meetings. I've appreciated all sentiments. But yeah, one of the great things I enjoyed, the accountability subcommittee, when we spoke to the assistant superintendent in charge of testing.
Dr. Oakley.
Thank you, Dr. Oakley. And my question was, well, what needs to happen? What changes? What's the great change? I don't remember the exact wording that I said. If you had all the funds that were necessary, what needs to be done to improve our district? And I expected her to tell me something about some great testing system that she's heard of, or some way, or test administrators, just some way that we can assess students better. Instead, she said that we really don't have it, but we need to find a way to improve those soft skills, that go-get-itness, the grittiness, that we need to improve that somehow. And the fact that that's not her area of expertise, but she would publicly state that, well, that's what our district needs to do to improve, and even though there's not a solution, we would need to work toward that, then I like that, because that just means that there's a right person in the right seat on the bus, but she's still saying, hey, our bus has some place that we're all going. And so I look for that. We've gone from, in my mind, we've gone from top, talking to trustees and superintendents and so forth, and I really wanted to find more information and nuggets of what needs to be done. But in terms of our next steps, I've also thought of the last few weeks, maybe we go from the bottom. And we've talked to the community, just regular people who are out there, who volunteer with schools. We've talked to teachers who work with schools. But I would like to look at that SBDM structure. And more importantly, when I first started working with the SBDM, and I went to the SBDM training, they said the main output of an SBDM, the purpose of an SBDM is to support and assist the principal. The main output is a campus improvement plan. So it says, here is what the campus of teachers, campus administrators, community members, parents, here's what they agree upon that we need to work on. Here are our challenges, and here's how we're going to improve upon those challenges, or here are some of our goals. And I'd really like to almost have a campus improvement plan, I don't know, symposium, where other SBDMs can listen to each other, and we have the executive directors and the assistant superintendents, because for one thing, I think it'll force half of them to actually talk to their SBDMs and say, okay, do y'all have a campus improvement plan? Because I don't really think they do. And the ones that do, I don't think they create it as they should with everyone's involvement. Yeah, Julie needs to push that green button because they can't hear me. But I'd like to hear that. And I think that as what Commissioner Reese and Commissioner Freeman have said, that once we hear that stuff, I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, is that what you need? Are those your challenges? Well, you need to talk to so-and-so, or here's the department that does that. So that's one of the things I'd like to see as our next steps. And I take it upon myself to have more community meetings. I know some of us expressed early on in our process that we would be meeting within our districts, outside of our districts, whatever. I just haven't done that as much as I would like. I told my wife, hey, if I get on this commission, because she's the one that urged me, well, I think you ought to go do that. I'm like, that means I'd be meeting with people more than a trustee would, and, you know.
I don't think so.
Okay, some of them, but yes, and I think there are other research studies, as Commissioner Ranger has said, there are many studies out there of things that can be done. I think we can look at it. One of the great things, as I said, of spending that year without having the petitions signed and submitted, but spending that year to really comb through the Texas Education Code to see what's in there, as we learned in our first meeting, what's in there that we may not like. What do we want to take out and say, you know what, let the rest of Texas be governed by that. We're going to skip this rule right here. And what is it that we say? We think that we're Dallas, and we need to have something else added in there that helps us. It may not help the rest of Texas, but it's going to help us. And I think class sizes are in the education code. And I know people say, well, they can always get waivers, but if we put it in there that from pre-K to 3, you're not going to have any more than 15 students, it's at least in there. And if we put it in there, universal pre-K, it's at least in there. I think that grades, my daughter's in 3rd grade, my oldest daughter, and just because she's in the 3rd grade, she's only in 3rd grade because of her age. I think that her skill level, I don't think she's at the same math level as other students her age. I don't think she reads at the same level as other students her age. But everybody says, well, you're a 3rd grade. And if you don't pass 3rd grade, then you must not be smart. So you need to do 3rd grade again. Jeff, you want to do something radical? Let's get rid of grade levels and say, hey, you're not in a grade by your age, but you're at a level by your ability. I'm not trying to track students. I'm just trying to say that if you're smart enough to do this, I don't care if you're 8, if you're 10, if you're 4, well, let's teach these students this. Otherwise, that 8-year-old, well, they need to wait on the teacher to help them because teacher's helping this other student that may not be at the same level. I like the idea, I think from our teacher meeting that we heard of having 3-year contracts for some of our students, whether it's distinguished teachers, whether we put some number on it to say, hey, at least 15% of our teachers need to have a 3-year contract. That's something that we can put in the charter. And that's what I want people to do. I want people to say, I don't think you should write a charter, but if you do, I want you to put this in there to benefit the teachers. I want you to put this in there to benefit students. Now, I want to hear the fears. We've heard a fear that, hey, the state legislators can come in and say, well, we're going to change the law so you don't need 25% or you don't need 20% to change the charter, that you can do it with only 10%. Okay, if we know that that's one of our fears and we put in there's a provision within our charter that if the state law changes such that you need less than 15% turnout, we're going to get rid of our charter. Our charter is null and void. So then that McAllen representative has to think about it. Well, if I vote for this bill, then I'm going to change the Dallas education system. But I want to put poison pills in there to protect against things that we don't like. And I do think we should have more of our teacher meetings. I felt very good after our last teacher meeting. That was a great experience, and I think it was a great experience for those teachers and administrators that showed up as well. I would recommend at least 2 more of those, just to give other people the opportunity to come out and give their ideas, to give their input. But I like where we are. I like where we're headed. I don't know if we will have a charter that 8 of us agree upon. I don't know if we'll have a charter that 25% of Dallas ISD voters vote upon or 13% of them agree with. But, if we stick something out there, they have to pay attention. In fact, we know that if we stick something out there, they have to pay attention twice. Whether or not it's voted upon by the majority of people, by enough people, I want the spotlight on Dallas ISD. And I want us to show, here's what's good. As the superintendent said, that they're working on understanding that wish list of what they need volunteers to do at each campus, of what the resource needs are at each campus. I want us to have that ready by the time the Dallas Morning News and the other news outlets say, hey, here's what changes folks are proposing for Dallas ISD. Do you agree with it? What do you think about your local school?
Luke,
I want that.
you ready?
Yes.
I need to give Kevin a chance.
Thank you, sir. I guess I want to start just like everybody and thank you, Mr. Weiss, for being a chair. You've been pretty fabulous. Thank the rest of you folks for spending your time out here with us. I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to say this. My only motivation for accepting the appointment to this commission was to help affect positive outcomes for children. I truly believe that education is the vehicle that will offer you options and opportunities to be happy in your life. And frankly, for me, that's what education has afforded me, the opportunity to be happy in my life. And so I look for that from my students. Having said that, Mr. Weiss, I just simply want to report to you that I feel like we've done our due diligence in listening to all these community groups, lobbying groups, nonprofits, however you want to label them. And I'm ready to declare where I stand on this issue. I think we know, I think there's a consensus amongst us the types of programs that have come up that would make this district a more effective place and effective positive outcomes on kids. I don't want to belabor the points with any of my opinions about those programs. And I think, I hope everybody else has. I want to report to you, I've done my due diligence. I've read all this stuff that came in front of us. I read a whole lot more than just that. So again, I just want to wrap up and say simply, I'm at the place where I can say whether or not I believe that a charter is the vehicle that is going to offer our children options and opportunities to be happy in their life. And if that charter is not, if the decision of the commission is not to write a charter, I could be swayed to participate in a process that resulted in a list of recommendations for the school district. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. First, needless to say, I appreciate the kind remarks. When I went online and signed up for this, I had no idea I would even be appointed, let alone have your trust to be chair. And I appreciate, at least what I'm hearing, that I've earned it somehow. If I have another grandchild, I'm publicly announcing, and I know Nana is listening. If it's a boy, it's named Toma, Texas Open Meeting Act. And the middle name will be Ranger, so it's going to be Toma Ranger, whatever child has it. Freely confessing that I came into this from the private sector, and I quickly had my sight restored so that Toma is my watchword. And then you have been kind to allow me to be humorous on occasion. normally don't have a captive audience where I can practice my sit-up routine because I never do it standing. And I think we need to recognize that we truly were in our uncharted territory. We truly were. Some of you have heard my stand-up speech that we were like the show Star Trek. We were the new starship called Home Rule Charter. It never had sea trials or flight trials, depending on your metaphor. It didn't have a propulsion system. We realized it didn't have a navigation system, and I dare say the crew here wasn't even sure it wanted to be on the journey. And I didn't really know that I was going to be Captain Bob Kirk. But we had one lesson, you can tell my age, from that show, and that was to venture where no one's gone before and do no harm. And I will declare us entirely successful on the first 6 months of our voyage. We have encountered territory where no one's gone before. We have been respectful. We have not disturbed the universe. We have created conversation where none existed before. And I dare say, as a resident of Dallas, in any space, from the Trinity Toll Road to the city's charter revisions, that there has not been a better process that has tried to deal with a subject of such complexity with a group of people who did not know each other, where fate, if there is such a thing, put us together, has done such a remarkable job. And for that, I am profoundly moved. And my focus is even more concentrated because I just got my tax bill. And I just realized, as an empty nester homeowner, half my bill is for the DISD. And to you former trustees, thank you. And to the trustee in the audience, thank you. Every dollar is well spent, I think. So let me just say what I've heard, and I won't be long. When I started and I listened, I heard a lot of D words. There were deficits in kids because they were poor. There were deficits in instruction because somehow the teachers weren't doing it. We were having disinterested communities. The parents were disengaged. We have to differentiate and have differentiation amongst the employees, and we have to have disruption. I never heard so many D words in my entire life in 6 months. You know, my grandkids call me dummy sometimes. I'm sorry, Jake. But I never heard so many D words. And in my view, at my age, I want to live in a place where there's a sense of community that looks at the assets on the ground and builds from them, as limited as they might be, as starved for resources they might be. But that's an article of faith for me. You know, we are a community that has assets. We are a community that has great people in it, but we are a community that does not trust. And to me, right now in my life, trust is the social capital that makes our community survive. If all we have is mistrust, and if all we have is the sense of no one can be right if I have to be wrong, if there is no common ground, I don't know how we have community. And at the end of the day, public schools are about education, but that education has to be in community, in listening to each other, in service to each other, real servant leadership. And I think I am a classically educated person. I don't know about the workforce. I was in the wilderness when I was young, but I knew how to read. I knew how to write. Math was a liberal arts. Math taught you how to do algebra. Math taught you to understand what an algorithm was, even though Google was not invented when I was a young man. And by the way, neither was TI calculators. And math taught me, and liberal arts and a well-rounded education taught me how to think. And thinking builds trust. Thinking sets us free. Thinking allows us to have informed opinions. Thinking makes community where we can disagree but be respectful. Thinking allows us to respect each other's faith, each other's perspective, where you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. You don't have to be wrong for me to be right. And whatever the motivations and the people who got us here, they came and they presented. For the motivation of the people who wanted this stop, they came and we listened. There has been no one who has not been heard. No one who has not been heard. No one. Now, have we heard everyone? No. But everyone who wanted to be heard and who you put on that list was invited and was heard, and they were heard respectfully. So where does that leave me? It leaves me brokenhearted to hear, and I'm using first names tonight, Isaac have a cry of the heart and use the word shame. If that doesn't give us pause from someone who started with Teach of America, who got pounded a little bit on Saturday, and then explained the rest of his biography, for a young man who's going to graduate school, for another member who is getting her PhD, for another teacher who is a lawyer who became a teacher, if we don't understand and hear and feel that pain of that cry of the heart, then we need to disband. We need to disband, in my opinion. We can't be a community in a school district that has people pleading for the little things and having a sense of shame. If we can't hear the cry, then we need to open our hearts and we need to open our minds and find a way for each of us to reconcile that. And I thank you for laying that out in the barest and rawest of emotions. And I want you to know that of all the things I've been thinking about, that touched me. And I want to talk about the spotlight, and I want to talk about what we ought to do going forward. Because at the end of the day, Commissioner Ranger has put the question before us. At the end of the day, we have to decide whether we want to do a charter or not. And if we don't want to do a charter, do we want to do some recommendations or not? There are a series of questions that are going to come before us sooner than later. Each of us will have to come to some informed decision as the best that you can for whatever motives you have. And we will have that debate with the motion duly made and seconded. And then we will have a recorded vote. I promise you that. And I'd rather do that in January so that we can get that issue behind us and not have it hanging over our heads. And I want to thank the Commissioner Ranger, for at least structuring a conversation that we can have. I don't believe it's a mutually exclusive vote. To say you're against it doesn't mean you can't lay down recommendations, which we've heard. If you are for it and that prevails, we're still left with the task of writing it. We all know that the legislature is going to go in session. We know how the election turned out. You can go online and find out every bill that's been filed. We have no control whether they try to amend this law while we're in process or not. All we can do is act on what we know, and at some point we're going to have to do that. I have great respect for your capacity to do that. And the last thing I just want to say, because this is a cry from my heart, the saddest thing I have heard, and the thing that has troubled me most, and it's with all due respect to everything that has been said, is that if you asked me back when this started that I would hear the F word, and my grandchildren are probably listening, oh, Papa's going to lose it now. The F word. If you told me I would hear the F word so often repeated from people I respect who come up to me on the street and having fear, the idea that we can't talk about education without fear and that we had a model that it was safe to come forward troubled me deeply. Troubled me really profoundly deeply, that we are at a point in our civic life that hardworking people who care about all our children, even if they're not my birth children or my adopted children, have a sense of fear. What does that say about us? Just stop and think. We have a cry of the heart. We have people of fear, and we've now come to a place where at least on December 6th, people try to speak up, that people have spoken up out in the public. If I take nothing else from this, and however it turns out, that if I can tell myself that somehow there was a place and a time where fear was let go, and that we created a safe harbor, I'm going to take that as a victory for me. And I hope you feel that as well. And that's what I wanted to share with you. I have lots of notes about how we can do things differently. But I think at the end of the day, the values and the moral value that we have posited here, that democracy does work, that you can be heard, that you can be listened, that people do matter regardless of your station, and to the trustees who served, who've been beaten up a bit here, and to the trustees who've come and talked to us, to the superintendent, whether we love him or agree with him or not, we created an environment that allowed people to speak. If SOPS wants to take credit for doing that, as we say in Yiddish, Gesei gesund, good luck and thank you very much. If you want to take credit for it, good for you. At the end of the day, we did something important for the city of Dallas and not just the school district. And I hope everyone who is listening to this understands the significance of what has happened these last 6 months. And if they were listening tonight, they know we're serious people, we're thoughtful people, we're caring people, and we all want to do what's right for the children of Dallas. And no one can take that away from us. No one in the media, none of your friends, none of the general public, and no crotchety taxpayers like me. All right? I want you to go home believing that, because I really believe that. It's almost 8:15. I want to yield to Commissioner Ranger to discuss what he's laid down for us and tell us your reasoning. And is that agreeable with everybody? With the document, I want to respect that. You have the floor.
I would like to say, first of all, before I forget, thank you, Commissioner Dawson, for your comments about your openness to what the intention is here. And you did an excellent job of, incidentally, we didn't speak, did we?
No.
Never said a word to you.
No.
But yet you
Am I being deposed?
Sounds like it.
I know you're a lawyer. Let the record reflect.
I wouldn't dare.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that I had no communication with you about this, but you are the reason that I did this, because I don't remember how many meetings ago, you framed this issue and you started talking about we were getting to a point where we needed to see where we stood. So last night I didn't go to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I started thinking further about what you had said, and then all of a sudden, this is what I started working on in the middle of the night. But let me express the intention here. First of all, my heart is fixed at this point, and my mind is made up. There is nothing that I can possibly conceive that I would learn from this point forward that I don't already know. I came with some misconceptions, of course, and some good conceptions based upon my own background and my own reading and involvement in education for some time. So I didn't start from a blank, it was not an empty nest. So I came with some preconceived notions, I'll put it that way, about this whole issue based upon an awful lot of research and investigation of a number of issues. But the concept of this is not to rush anything, and it's certainly not to attempt to persuade anybody to do anything. It's simply an attempt to frame the issue to see if you're ready to make a decision. I am. And my perception of this is very clear. First of all, on the law. I don't make presumptions about the law, I read it. And what I have read in the law clearly says that we have a responsibility here to either frame a charter or not frame a charter. We have no other responsibility at this place. Frame the charter or don't frame the charter. We were not given a responsibility beyond that. And the board, when it issued a resolution authorizing our appointment to this commission, it says very clearly in that resolution, whereas the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission has the sole discretion and authority to determine that no home rule school district charter need be adopted. Now, all of the input that I've gotten, and incidentally, like I say, I'm really glad that the commission decided to accelerate all of that, because I would have done it a lot slower. But my perception of that is those are the people. There's nobody that we prohibited from coming to those meetings. There were no restraints. There was no reason for anybody who had any conviction about this issue not to show up at a meeting, and they did not. And the overwhelming majority of the people are fully on board against home rule. So if we're talking about democracy, and we allegedly represent that, we've heard democracy speak to us. And it was of one accord. We don't want home rule charter. I remember even in District 8 when I couldn't understand the Spanish being spoken, but I heard the heart being spoken. And those people were not there to get us to adopt a home rule charter. They were there to get answers to the problems of their children. And they were speaking from their hearts about their problems. They didn't know an awful lot about home rule, but they knew about their children and the problems they were experiencing. I remember over at Madison, there was a gentleman who walked out of the meeting. Only time someone walked out of a meeting that we had. I followed that gentleman and his wife out to their car, just asked him a simple question. What is bothering you? Why did you leave this meeting? And he told me briefly, he said, school, I wanted to tell you about drugs being sold at the school, and we were very disturbed about it, and we didn't want our child to go there. I said, well, believe me, the commission is very concerned about that. And I just wanted to make sure that I understood what was really bothering you, and now I know. And, we had a brief little conversation, and I came back into the meeting. Well, that was my whole experience. I assume, and I know from what I read into law, that it does not give us the right to make up and amend the Texas Education Code. We are bound to follow the Texas Education Code. And all it says is you have one duty. Your duty is to frame a charter or not to frame a charter. Now, this is not the Commission on Educational Excellence that you were on 30 years ago and that my wife was on. This is not the commission on the Dallas Achieves Commission, which was a commission of 65 citizens that spent millions of dollars and years of work and product. We were appointed to do one simple task. You all are to decide, do you believe that it is in the best interest of Dallas ISD to frame a charter or not to frame a charter? So my belief is very simple. After you made those remarks, all I'm trying to do here is to frame the issue in such a way that you can bite on it. Now, you might bite on it, it's bitter. You might bite on it and you like it. But one thing you should not do, you should not misconceive our role here. We're not here to be a Dallas Achieves Commission. We are here to deal with the issue of charter. Now, let me say this. 1984, on a Sunday, Dallas ISD was born. On a Sunday afternoon, a group of people smaller than this met in Dallas, Texas, and created Dallas ISD. The first schools were 6 schools. 2 of those schools were colored schools. Out of 6 schools, 2 were colored schools. We weren't called black in Africa, we were called colored. But one of those schools, colored school number 2, is now Booker T. Washington, one of the best schools in the nation, and that this district is very proud of. It became Booker T. Washington, the performing arts. From 1984 to 1947, this district was engaged in an epic battle. It was under the mayor and the city council of Dallas. This district began under the mayor and the city council of Dallas. And for decades, W.T. White was one of them. People in this district fought to get out from under the city council and the mayor of the city of Dallas. It was a horrible experience, and in order to manifest a better educational system, they fought until they won their freedom from any other governmental entity. That's where we get the name Independent School District, because we're not under another governmental institution, unless we want to go and re-enslave ourselves. But freedom is very important. Now, not only is freedom important, but when we're talking about slavery of different kinds of the mind, that's menticide. Well, the point is, we're here to have the spine to make a simple decision. Now, you don't have to rush it if it's untimely or whatever. The chair can make a different decision and all of that. But the idea is to understand why we're here, to try to make it a little more clear. And if you don't understand it, I invite you to discuss it or to debate it. I love to, Socrates is my favorite philosopher, and all he did was walk around asking people questions, and for that they killed him. Because he asked the wrong questions, and they said he was corrupting the youth. But the point is, hard questions are really enjoyable. So if you want to understand what is really being intended here, or if you don't understand why it's framed this way, just call and we can discuss it offline, but I'm not going to take up your time here. But all I wish to emphasize here is this. Make no mistake about it. You are a Chapter 11 independent school district from 1947 until now. We have been an independent school district in ISD. Before that, we were not. So all of those decades, you're now being asked to throw it away. and convert yourself from an independent school district, an ISD, to a charter school district. Now, all the research that I have read about charter schools, it clearly establishes, including the most important, the Credo study, and a person connected to the Credo study just this week admitted that market reform does not work in education. It may work in economics, but economists are the worst people to put in charge of education because all they're talking about is profit and how to profitize education, how to monetize. But the point is, we are here to assess whether or not it makes sense academically, intellectually, for us to convert this district from an independent school district to a charter school district. It does not make sense because on average, independent school districts do far better in educating our children of all levels, socioeconomic levels, and particularly the poor. There are excellent charter schools, but that does not mean we waste our time and energy converting 220 schools that have been here for decades on a whim and an experiment with our children instead of understanding that's a very serious responsibility. And all I'm saying is, if you're willing to at least take a look at it, I'm ready to make the decision, and I think the decision ought to be exactly what the Education Code says. Now, if we think we have the authority to amend the Texas Education Code, we do not. We do not have the authority to amend the Texas Education Code. If we're going to violate the Texas Education Code, then we're no better than others that we accuse of doing that, or that we complain about the board or whatever. The board does the best that it can. You know, they're human beings. They have all kinds of issues facing them, and they make the decisions. But the problem that the board doesn't confront is when they make a mistake, they will not correct it, they will not admit it, they will not take responsibility, and they will not hold certain people accountable. However, they are human beings. All I'm saying is I believe it's time for us to confront this issue. How do you sing God's song in a strange land? Charter schools are a strange land. We're going to take our kids, 220 schools, over 160,000 students on a whim, when we know not the unintended consequences of doing that. Not me. I know what the research says, and it is very conclusive. All you have to do is Google. And it's right there for all of us at our fingertips. It does not work. In the masses of students that we educate, we're in the right place. I would say we should stay in this place. But if it is the will of this commission, you know, we vote, that's democracy, and if the majority wants to do that, we will stay. We will not stay. But I would suggest that we at least, at this point, ought to confront the issue and proceed and address it and vote on it, and then we'll know where we stand, and you can proceed from that point on.
I thank you for your comments. You understood my intent. I think at some point, some straw vote to give us direction, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a moment, whether it's this specific motion, which I thank you for at least structuring the motion. Everyone can read it. There's not a vote tonight. And I'm not asking you to raise your hands in a straw vote. If you look at our calendar, our next meeting is January 5th, and then there's another meeting in January. We don't have any other, any other scheduled speakers. So the agenda at the moment is open, and I just want to do that. So Commissioner Flores, did you want to
propose a motion to adjourn?
Okay. I'm just going to ask you to hold that for a moment. I want to take an order, Commissioner.
Is it appropriate to ask a couple of questions about the document?
I would suggest you just let us all have a chance to read it, or an email, but if he wants to entertain it, I'm just trying to watch the clock. Yeah, but let me just, I'm just trying to do some time management here.
Sure, that'll be fine.
And Jerome's next, and then.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that this be put on the agenda as an action item and be the first item after the approval of minutes.
For our next meeting?
At our January 5th meeting.
All right, I'll take that under advisement.
Well, I had something similar. I was going to ask that it be put on the second meeting in January for action, and for the meeting in the first meeting in January that be put on as a discussion item.
That would be the 20th.
Yes. action item on the 20th and a discussion on the 5th.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that will also perhaps allow people to take your whereases. You might have some more recitals. But the chair will take that under consideration. Let me just see kind of a nod that between the two meetings, it'll be a motion and action item. Are we agreeable to that? Just
I would
again.
definitely prefer that we don't vote on anything till the 20th.
Okay.
I need time
to digest it.
absorb and
That's
talk it.
yeah.
Let me say that the session of the Texas Legislature does start the 13th, so I think it would behoove this body to act prior to the Texas session beginning. That way we can move forward and do things.
Why?
I was going to say why.
Why?
One at a time.
Slave to them.
Yeah.
You give an opportunity before the session. I think after the session started, different things have already happened, and we can just set in motion, whatever we feel this will is.
But let me follow up. But why? I mean, why is that so specifically important?
Again, which body put this together? It was the session of the Texas Legislature created the law that did this. I'm just saying they began their session on the 13th of January.
There is a context, but it does not have to interfere with the process. I think, if I might put words in your mouth, whatever bills are going to be introduced because of our activity will either be flattering to us or we will be social outcasts, depending on your political point of view. But we are not, what we are voting on is what's already been set in motion. Legislation, if I might extrapolate, can be introduced through February, mid-February, early February.
Bills have already started to be introduced, and through February they.
I would suggest that the chair.
Yeah.
That the chair just make that.
I am. I'm going to do that. And I appreciate that because I want to be really clear. We need to stay focused. You need to do some deep. I hate that word. I apologize. Mea culpa. Oh my God. I never said the word deep. Strike it from the record, whoever's taking minutes. That you think about. Yes. I will have to repent. Everyone who thinks deeply. So that's a gratuitous use of the word deep. So what I was trying to say is that you will take the time to be reflective. We have captured the chair's intention that at the midpoint, when we start again, to have some pathway that will lead us forward. And this is a way to frame it. I, on the record again, appreciate that it being done. You can massage it, you can decide what you want to do. But I will have, between the two meetings, a vote, because I do personally believe, and I will say this for the record, that we need to have a sense of this group about our direction, because we have basically 12 meetings next year, and we need to decide what we want to do at that time or not use that time. So at this point, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. The time is now 8:30. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.